Hi everyone, welcome back to sportsbookreview.com. Natalie Rydstrom here, and we have Ian O'Sullivan back with us in the studio from cyclingbetting.co.uk, here to talk about the upcoming Tour de France that's taking place, or starting, shall I say, on Saturday. Ian, great to have you back. Long time no speak.
Thank you, Natalie. Great to be back. Looking forward to the tour now.
I am as well. Listen, I've been all over your website, obviously preparing for this interview with you, and you've got some great information, but you've also as well, for people who want to subscribe as well, you offer additional cycling betting information. Tell us quickly a little bit about cyclingbetting.co.uk.
Well, it's a website I set up 3 or 4 years ago on the back of just a lot of friends and people who I knew said, you know, you should do this full time. I liked to analyze races, do previews, and very often I was picking winners. So you know, I took some time, put the site together, and it's going very well. I've got a lot of supporters, a lot of followers who enjoy the previews and hopefully win some money for my tips.
Fantastic stuff. Honestly, we're really happy to have you here with us, and your wealth of knowledge. Start off with, what sets the Tour de France off from other grand tours?
Well, it's the size of it, the sheer enormity and the worldwide audience that follows the Tour de France. I mean, you've got the Tour of Spain in September, and you've got the Giro de Italia in May, and they're, in many people's eyes, they're actually better races, but they're dwarfed by the enormity of the Tour de France. The whole world watches the Tour de France. People who don't normally watch cycling will tune in to watch the highlights, you know, every evening in the Tour de France. And the whole of France goes out on the side of the road. There'll be millions and millions of people will go out and watch every single stage of the Tour de France. And, you know, from our point of view as well, it's the biggest time of the year, the best time of the year for betting on cycling, because the bookmakers suddenly go crazy about cycling, and we have a whole wealth of markets that we can bet on.
Yeah, well, there are. Listen, we'll get to that in a second, but quickly, let's talk about the 27 Giro d'Italia. Nail-biting, intense, dramatic. I think the lead changed no fewer than 8 times there. Is this what we may be able to expect here from the Tour de France here? Something similar to that?
Well, if it's anything like the Giro d'Italia, Natalie, it's going to be one hell of a race. The Giro was one of the most incredible, dramatic races I've ever seen, I think. We had the most incredible sight of the leader of the race having to stop halfway through a stage to, let's just say, answer the call of nature in a bush, while some of his rivals decided to carry on going. And it caused a bit of controversy at the time, but in the end, he had the last laugh. And he won the race on the very final day with a powerful time trial. So, I mean, he was something like 20-25 to 1 to win the race. Nairo Quintana was the favourite to win, but Nairo just couldn't answer him on you know, over the 3 weeks. He was beaten fair and square on nearly all the decisive stages.
Yeah, well, listen, when nature calls, Ian, there's nothing you can do about that. But yeah, did go on to win the race. So fantastic. Listen, does that mean, though, heading into the Tour de France, does that mean that we could see a surprise winner?
Honestly, no. I really don't think so. You know, at the top of the betting, you've got Richie Porte and Chris Froome, and I think I've written in my preview, in all the years that I've been betting on the Tour de France and similar kind of races, I've never seen anything like this, where actually, depending on which bookmaker you look at, they've got different favourites. Normally you've got somebody who's a clear favourite and then maybe a second favourite, and then the prices jump up from there. You've got 2 or 3 guys who are usually head and shoulders above the rest. But this year, Chris Froome has drifted from sort of 8 to 13 last year after he won the race for the 3rd time, out to nearly as big as 2 to 1 in places. Whereas Richie Porte has come in from 10 to 1 in January, when he was winning the Tour Down Under, to, in some places, favouritism. So we basically have joint favourites. It looks like it's between the two of them. They make up, I don't know, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but something like 75% of the book between them. And then you've got Nairo Quintana sitting behind them, one of the best stage race riders in the world, who finished 2nd in the Giro d'Italia, has won the Giro d'Italia in the past. And so the likely scenario is it'll probably come from one of the 3 of them. I think there's a pretty low chance of there being a surprise result this year, but you can never tell in cycling.
Yeah, no, that's certainly right. Why have Porte odds shrunk?
Well, he's just had a brilliant season. Port has always sort of been the nearly man. He used to ride in the same team as Chris Froome, Team Sky, and he used to be his dog's buddy. He's worker on the climbs. He used to ride at the front and destroy everybody, all the rivals of Chris Froome. So when it came towards the end of the stage, Chris Froome would just take off, and nobody had any energy left because Richie Port had killed everybody. But now he's riding on a different team, BMC. He's matured into a leader of BMC, and he's had a fantastic season. He should have won the Critérium de Dauphiné, which is a big sort of pre-Tour de France test over some of the roads and hills that they will be riding in the Tour de France. He was the best rider by a mile. He should have won it, but he got mugged on the last day. He one small error of judgment when he let Chris Froome go over the top of the penultimate climb on the final day. He lost some time on the flat when everybody else ganged up against him when he was on his own. But when it came to the final climb, he absolutely destroyed everybody that was up the road ahead of him. He caught Chris Froome, who had a minute lead on him. And by the time he reached the finish, he had put 21 seconds into him. So he was the best rider in the race. He's the best rider, best climber in the world at the moment, as far as I'm concerned. And he whooped Chris Froome in the Critérium de Dauphiné and in the Tour Romandie before that. He won the Tour Romandie, beat Chris Froome by, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but he beat him by 37 seconds in the time trial, which is quite significant because Chris Froome is usually, quite good in the time trials. But the problem with Richie is that he's had just an enormous amount of bad luck, bad judgment over the years. He's had punctures when, at the worst possible moment. He's had crashes at the worst possible moment. He's got sick. He's been in positions in the past where he could have done much better. And everybody seems to think, well, it's only a matter of time until Richie has his off day, his bad day in this tour. And at the price now, 13 to 8, 6 to 4, not a lot of people are willing to put their money behind him. I backed him in January at 10 to 1. I'm very happy with my 10 to 1 each way, and a little bit of 9 to 1 as well, but not, it's kind of hard to back him now at 6 to 4, 7 to 4, that sort of way.
And that's right as well. There's so many factors to take into consideration that you can't plan for, obviously, that will happen across the tour. Are there markets that we can look at that maybe have a little bit more reliability of coming in?
Well, you asked, is there a chance of a surprise? Well, you'll get each way payouts in the first 3 in the tour. So, if you're looking for somebody maybe to try and sneak into the top 3, Romain Bardet finished second last year with a superb into the race. He's kind of my outsider for sneaking into the top 3 as well. I think he's around about the 12 or 14 to 1, that sort of way, but I expect a big ride from him as well. If that's the case, and Richie Port and Chris Froome finish first and second, potentially, it could mean that we see Nairo Quintana off the podium, and I'm sure there must be a bet somewhere where you can back Nairo Quintana not to finish on the podium, and maybe somebody might be interested in that. Besides that, you've got all the other markets like the Green Jersey, which is, Peter Sagan. We've said this over the last couple of years. I think I've recommended backing him with you last 2 years running since we've been doing this, and he's absolutely hacked up each time. He won by a country mile last year. He basically had the jersey sewn up after about 6 or 7 stages. He's quite a short price this year. He's 4 to 7. I think he should be about a 1 to 4 shot or 1 to 5 shot. You're basically betting whether he will crash or finish the race or not, as far as I'm concerned. If he finishes the race, he wins it. Simple as that. But there are other riders then, like I quite like Arnaud Demar, French sprinter, who's doing really, really well this year. He's 12 to 1, 14 to 1, and I backed him each way behind Sagan. If for whatever reason maybe something happens to Sagan, I think Arnaud Demar will be right up there. Got the King of the Mountains market, always a very, very difficult market to bet on because you don't really know who's going for it. Very often plans change, like in the Giro d'Italia. You had Mikel Landa was supposed to be going for the GC, but he was involved in that crash with the police motorbike, and suddenly his race was over as far as the GC was concerned, and he focused on the King of the Mountains and won it. But this year you've got Rafael Majka, who has won the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France twice in the past, and I think he's going to be right up there again. He won the Tour of Slovenia just a few weeks ago with a very, very confident looking, powerful performance, and I think he'll be going for the jersey again this year. I think he's about 7-1 that sort of way, and he's my bet for the King of the Mountains.
Yeah, I tell you one market that we've not really talked about, or sort of style of betting, I suppose, is in-play betting during cycling. Is this popular with a race like Tour de France when there's so many factors to consider? Is there a lot of in-play betting?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some of the bookmakers in the UK will offer in-play betting. They generally tend to start the markets when live TV footage comes on. So in normal racing that kind of starts maybe about 2:30 UK time. But for the Tour de France, the organisers have managed to secure live TV coverage for the entirety of every single one of the 21 stages. But what generally tends to happen is the bookmakers will sort of wait and see what happens, because generally a break will go, a bunch of guys, 4, 6, 8, 10 will get up the road, they'll form a break. And when that settles down and the bookmakers see who's in the break, who's not in the break, how much of a gap have they got, does it look like they'll stay away to the finish, then they'll start to price it up. So sometimes if you think the break won't make it, you'll get some juicy prices on the guys who were favourites before the race, because they will have pushed out their price a little bit with the possibility that the break might make it. So yeah, absolutely, they'll price up things like finishing positions. So maybe will the favourite finish first to third, fourth to 10th, outside the top 10, and match bets as well in play. So you might have first versus second in the betting, who will win the match bet, and so on.
Do you offer any sort of service either on your website or on social media, i.e. Twitter, where you give either in-play bets or sort of current news that our viewers can use, obviously, if they are in-play betting?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a subscription or anything like that for my in-play stuff. I just tweet what I see, basically. So if your viewers want to follow me, I'm at Cycling Betting, and you'll find me tweeting all during the stages, and I'll give my commentary on, this guy is looking good, he's going well, I don't think the break will stay away, I think the break will come back and the sprinters will have it, and I might take a view in play that someone will offer value, he's looking good, or his team seem to be very interested in the stage, they're coming to the front, pushing hard, that sort of thing. So yeah, but just follow me on Twitter and you'll get all the free stuff.
Okay, so at Cycling Betting. And you also update your website every single day, is that right, with cycling coverage?
Absolutely, yes. So we've, we'll be doing coverage of I'll be doing some previews as well for Sportsbook Review. But on my own website, I'll be doing expanded expanded previews with a lot of details on the bets to make.
Great stuff. So one to follow there. Quickly, before I let you go, Ian, do you have any free tips you can give us right now that we can lock in now?
Yeah, well, there's another competition within the competition called the Young Riders, and this is for riders under 25 years of age. So they kind of have their own competition at the same time, and it's basically who's the highest, the quickest rider on 25. And there's a young chap from South Africa named Louis Minkes, and that's Mentjes. It's pronounced Minkes, I believe. And he's my pick for this. He's a 6-5 favourite, but he was second last year to a guy who's now too old. And they were a mile clear of everybody else. I think he was only something like 2 minutes behind the winner last year of the Young Riders jersey. He's going really well this year. I've been really impressed with his warm up to this Tour de France. He's sounding confident. He's talking in interviews about how he's going to ride a steady and sensible race. He wants to finish as high up the GC as possible, not going to take any silly risks and try crazy attacks that will use up a lot of energy. He's got his eyes set on the jersey, I think, and at 6-5, he's one of my strong bets for the Tour, I think. There's other quirky bets as well, like a number of finishers of the race. How many riders do you think will finish? 198 will start. The line at the moment is over under 170.5, and it's I think something like 5 to 6. Take your pick. And I think this year there's going to be over 170.5. It's quite an easy route this year. It's not as brutal as some of the routes we've seen in the past. There's something like 9 flat stages where the sprinters can get involved. And I think there'll be quite a lot of the riders will manage to make it to Paris in 3 weeks' time.
Okay, great stuff. That was Ian Sullivan from cyclingbetting.co.uk. Stay tuned, more Tour de France coverage coming up on our website, sportsbookreview.com. Ian, thank you once again for joining us today.